in a cave. And the granddaughter of Pilate never forgave the son of making dead and wanted to kill him because he called off their love affair. Although there was a group of 7 African-American men in the novel called the 7 Days who took it upon themselves to retaliate every time something wrong was done to an African-American by a white person, Toni Morrison used the character of Milkman Dead, Macon Dead's son, to challenge the strategy of Gita, his friend, who wanted to retaliate by telling him that that was futile, suggesting that forgiveness is a better way to go. It's something that runs deep in the African-American tradition, remember, because African-Americans, after more than 200 years of slavery, are not walking about in America looking for revenge. African-Americans illustrate this by giving their children names of people who enslaved their ancestors. There ain't no more love among human beings than naming your child. You see, mark of honor to name your child after somebody. And African-Americans have, not by force, but by choice, because nobody's forcing anybody. I mean, you could change your name today if you wanted. But we keep those names as marks of forgiveness, so that we too may be forgiving our own trespasses. Not just the names, but we send our children to be educated in schools where our children are denigrated and discriminated against. We give an ear to work for bosses that discriminate against us. We fight each other to be affiliated with religious organizations that are founded by people who despise us. We, as people of African descent, do all this not because we are stupid, but because we are a forgiving people. The message today is for us, as people of African descent, to extend this forgiveness to one another. Because it seems that we do not always extend the forgiveness to our own brothers and sisters on our streets, in our neighborhoods, in our villages in Africa. We have a brother today from Rwanda, and you all know what happened in 1994. These are brothers and sisters, killing brothers and sisters. Over what? How come we don't extend our forgiveness to one another? We should. What happened to us in Biafra? Okay, foreigners supplied the weapons, but it was our own brothers and sisters who wanted us dead. Yeah. And up to today, they have not apologized. They said, we deserved it. Why? So I would like to share with you the message from Malcolm X. The most important lesson, in my view, from the autobiography of Malcolm X is the lesson about forgiveness. Malcolm said that he learned that his leader, Elijah Muhammad, was messing with some of the ladies in the Nation of Islam. And he nearly lost his faith because he thought Elijah Muhammad was above that as a morally perfect person. So he nearly lost his faith. But the son, Muhammad, of Elijah Muhammad, sat down with Malcolm to study the Bible and the Quran. And in the Bible, they saw, as I've been saying, that almost all the great men in the Bible did some serious naughty stuff. But they were forgiven by a merciful God. As a message to all that we should be more forgiving to our fellow human beings. If you also go, Malcolm and Muhammad also went on to study the Quran. And the Quran is full of that message of mercy, that you should be merciful so that Allah will also be merciful to you. So as a result, Malcolm forgave and rededicated himself to his leader, Elijah Muhammad. Martin Luther King Jr. also preached a gospel about the meaning of forgiveness from 1948 to 1954, before we even knew about him. He was talking about forgiveness as a Christian weapon with which the fight for racial equality will be won. Even though he called it a Christian weapon, he said that he was sure that his congregation, Christian congregation, did not think he was practical to use forgiveness as a weapon. So he uses the story of the prodigal son who came back home after blowing his inheritance, and his father hugged him and kissed him and threw a big lavish party in honor of him. Whereas the brother who stayed home to work dutifully never got a party. This is the message of forgiveness, according to Martin Luther King Jr. And it is a message that comes to us from Christianity, from the gospel of Christ. Because Christ appears to be the first to reintroduce this message as a theme, a major theme in the scriptures. Prior to that, the prodigal prophet, Noah, not Noah, what's his name? The guy who went to Nineveh? Jonah was angry with God because the people of Nineveh had repented and were given a reprieve by a merciful God. Instead of celebrating that he was the instrument that turned the people who were sinful to become followers of God, he became angry. So Jesus came to tell the people in Palestine that the old book said you should love your neighbor as yourself. But I say to you that that's not a big deal. You should love your enemy. That's right. You should love your enemy. And they say, where you get that kind of idea? That is some kind of voodoo or something. Because Jesus grew up in Africa. Remember, he was taken there as a baby. He didn't come back until he was about 12, right? Yeah. And I'm saying, suggesting to you, you can't grow up in a place and not learn nothing from it. So I'm saying that this theme of forgiveness that was strange to even the Jews, unconditional love and forgiveness, was an African lesson that he brought back from Egypt. Martin Luther King Jr. takes that message and updates it by talking about what he called the word house. According to him, our famous author died and left some manuscripts about a word house that was inherited by the children of the earth as one family, and all they have to do is get along with each other to share the house rather than burn it down. The first time he gave that speech in 1968 was with reference to the civil rights struggle here in America, urging all Americans to see one another as brothers and sisters and not as enemies who ought to be defeated and humiliated. The second time he used the same speech, he gave the same speech was with reference to Vietnam, telling Americans not to look at the Vietnamese as their enemies who ought to be humiliated and humbled with napalm bomb and cluster bombing, but as brothers and sisters. The third time he used the speech in 1968 was at the height of the Biafra War. And although he did not mention Biafra, he used it to address the condition in apartheid South Africa, telling the people of South Africa and America not to choose sides in this fight, because it is a fight between brothers and sisters who must live in the house that they inherited from their ancestors, the way Mandela continued and eventually won. That word house is something that is known in my language as Mbari. Mbari in Igbo spirituality is a time when the community comes together to build a sculpture that represents the whole community, so they build a miniature house. But inside that house, you will see the figurines of every race on earth. Men and women, rich and poor, elders and children. They call it Mbari. And they will leave it out there in the rain for the rain to rain it back into the earth eventually. Years later, then they come back again and rebuild the Mbari together. Achebe talks about this in his book about the Biafra War. There Was a Country, which was published in 2012. And in South Africa, Bishop Desmond Tutu uses the concept of Ubuntu to talk about the same thing. Ubuntu means that we are a bundle of humanity, and you cannot oppress some while others feel free. Because once you oppress some of us, everybody bears the pain, according to Desmond Tutu. However, Martin Luther King Jr. said he learned nonviolence from the work of